You know, the water from this glass doesn't taste like $240,000, but it should, because the $240,000 cost of attendance for 4 years at my university got me this glass. It also got me about 50 other t-shirts, some unforgettable experiences, but you know what it didn't get me? A high-paying job. It's really weird, right? What's up, YouTube? So welcome to my channel. As you can see, my name is Morgan. The purpose of this channel is to basically kind of go over adulting things in addition to paying on loans, how to live your best life even though you have debt, kind of through my personal, well, pretty much it's 100% through my personal experience. So I can't speak on anyone else's truth besides my own. So that's what this channel is me going through my life and utilizing those mistakes that I've made to grow personally, but also help others grow along the way. Obviously, you're interested in knowing how I'm paying off my college debt. So for college, I chose to go to Wake Forest University. It is a small private institution in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I really enjoyed the small class size. I had family in North Carolina, so it was far enough away that my parents didn't have to like show up all the time, but it was close enough that if I wanted to come home, I could. I knew Wake Forest was for me since I was a senior in high school, and so I applied early decision. And I knew I wanted to be a scientist. I was an engineering program in high school, and I really got into biomedical engineering. So I more enjoyed the biology than I did the engineering. So I went to Wake Forest with the impression I was going to major in a science. I already knew that. Anyway, I applied early decision. I got accepted. So I ended up going to Wake. My issue is I thought they were going to give me a lot more financial aid than they did. So it's not like I didn't apply to scholarships. I applied to a ton of scholarships during my senior year in high school, and I was rewarded $3,000 in scholarships. The cost of attendance was $64,000 my first year. So I was gifted $12,000 the first go around from the university, in addition to being awarded $3,000. So we're at $15,000 that I'm not responsible for paying back out of $64,000 in total. So we went back to financial aid. We're like, hey, can we have more money? And they're like, ooh, we're out of most of the money. So here's what we can do. They gave me a little bit more money, and in total, they gave me, I think, $16,000. So that on top of the $3,000 is $19,000. So here is about $40-something thousand that I'm still responsible for. So in this video, I'll primarily be talking about how I dealt with the private loans and how I'm currently paying for what's left of the private loans and the federal loans that I'm paying, because we dealt with them a little bit differently. So this video will be broken into two parts, and it's broken up into how I handled my loans before and after they went into repayment. So during the time while I was in school, during my grace period, and after my grace period. So tip 1 is pay on your loans while you're still in college and before they go into repayment if you can. So Discover Loans is the first lender or bank, I guess, that we used when I was getting private loans. So Discover had this fixed payment plan that allowed you to pay, it forced you to pay at least $25 while you were still in college. They had other plans where you didn't have to pay $25, but you could have if you wanted to. There's no penalty in paying on your loans before they go into repayment. It's actually recommended. But we chose to pay on my loans while I was in school. So this is recommended that you do this because it decreases the amount of interest you have at the end of the day on your loan. So like really either way, you want to just keep paying on your loan to get that number as small as possible, even if it's chipping away a little by little. $25 is like you bought a pizza that month and you forgot about it. So for example, like, paying on your loans while you're in school, at least $25. Let's talk about like the federal subsidized loans. And your federal subsidized loans, they're not accruing interest while you're in school. So if you're smacking $25 away from these loans every month, you're kicking that directly from the principal. So that's less money you will have to pay back later. And that will end up saving you like hundreds of dollars at the end of the day It could save you thousands. I don't know how much money. I just say 25. You can do more, but it'll save you money at the end of the day when those loans go into repayment and they actually do start accruing interest.
So I wanted you guys to see what it looks like when you start paying on your loans while you're in college. I wanted a visual representation to show you how much money you're saving at the end of the day if you start paying on your loans early. So I have this example with student A and student B who both took out $20,000 their freshman year of college. Both of them, let's say they got cosigners, but obviously they had terrible credit because they're only 18 years old and have no credit history. So they have an interest rate of 8% on their $20,000 loan. So I have the compounding interval here as daily because your loans just don't tack on interest at the end of the year. Your loans are accumulating interest on a daily basis. So your interest accrues the daily interest accrual is on here as $4.38, and the annual interest accrual rate is the annual interest accrual in a year is $1,600. So by the end of the year, the end of your first year, your loan will be $21,000 and $21,600. So I have the loans here growing for 50 months, and I started it from the loans dispersed freshman year all the way until the end of their grace period. I felt like this is a pretty realistic example since you are going to take loans out your freshman year, and I did this as the longest period to show your loans are going to grow over 4 years. Okay, so all right. So the amount of that student A put on their loans while they were in college was $0, and student B actually chose to pay on their loans $50 a month. So it's pretty small number, $50 a month. It's a pretty small amount relative to how much you owe. So every 30 days, student A, like I said, put nothing on their loans, and student B put $50 on their loans every month until their loans went into repayment. So after those 50 months have passed, you can see student A has nothing paid on their loans, while student B has $2,500 put down on their loans. Each loan has accrued an interest of $6,666.50. So when you add those two values together, you get $26,666.50 in total. And that's going to be like for student A who didn't pay on their loans, that was the principal that they took out in addition to the interest that accumulated over those 50 months. So student B, you can see they have a smaller value in that principal plus interest after 50 months because they started paying on their loans earlier, which their value now is $24,166.50. And you're going to be like, oh, that's not a huge difference. And here's where the difference comes in. So this is an important detail that comes into play if your loans will grow off of compound interest, which Discover loans do. My Discover loans did. And so what that means, compound interest means, is your interest will be compounded with your principal amount that, is left over at the end of your grace period. So for student A, you see that the last line, his principal plus his interest after 50 months, is that $26,000. And so that will become his new principal amount, and that 8% interest will then be growing off of that $26,000 amount. So you can see you're paying interest on interest, which is why it's important to get rid of how much you owe as soon as possible, because student B now is, that 8% is growing off of $24,000 instead of $26,000. So the last line I have is the new annual interest after the principal and interest are combined. So you can see student A is now paying over $500 more a year on that in interest on that loan than when he originally took out the loan, compared to student B is now only paying about $300 more. And once again, you can say, oh, that's only a couple $100, but when you get a job and you're paying on your loans, a couple $100 can mean a lot.
So this leads into tip number 2. Getting your interest out of the way as soon as possible is the best thing you can look to do. Tip number 2 revolves around, during your grace period, is paying off the interest that has accrued during the 4 years you were in college. So this process will, in the long run, save you time and money. You really want to pay off this interest because when your loans go into repayment, when that grace period is over 6 months after you graduate, at least this is how Discover did it. So Discover took my principal interest, which I will go over an example of this with you a little bit later, but they took that principal and they added it to the interest I had accumulated in those 4 years, put it together, and made a new principal. So my annual interest was now, although fixed, it was the same. It was getting based off this larger principal number. And so you're paying interest on interest at the end of the day. So that's why I recommend paying either a chunk off or paying off your interest before your loans go into repayment. College loans are predatory. They really are. And this leads me into tip 3. So you want to try to consolidate your loans. And this one is a lot harder. Some of you are going to have trouble with this. I had trouble with consolidating my loans. So companies didn't want me to, they didn't want to let me consolidate my loans with them for 2 main reasons. One, because I owed too much money. And what's wild to me is Discover is a company that will consolidate your loans. And when I tried to consolidate my loans with them, which for 3 years I took my loans out with Discover, they told me I owed too much money. Now, that's really funny to hear that I owed too much money, but also most of my money was owed to Discover. So I started telling you off by how much money the first year of cost of attendance was. It was $64,000. By the time I graduated Wake Forest, the cost of attendance was around $71,000, $72,000. So over my time at Wake Forest, every year they gave me they didn't give me. I'm talking about I had to take out between around $40,000 and $45,000 in loans every single year at Wake Forest, which collectively at the end of the day, I ended up owing $180,000 and some change. That's all in my name. So most lenders were like, oh, you owe like over $100,000 and it's only your undergraduate degree. So it's not like I got that going to law school. They have a larger threshold for graduate degrees because they tend to cost more than undergraduate. So that was a main issue is, oh, I owe too much money. Part 2 of why they didn't want to lend to me is because I didn't make a lot of money, or I didn't make enough money to pay off said consolidated loan, which also made no sense because I wasn't making any money when they gave me the loan. So once again, it's a revolving door trap. Like companies that give out student loans, they will give you the money, no problem. Let's say, take it, here, it's yours. All right, sign the dotted line. And when you come to go, okay, I finished my education, I want to pay back my loans, and they're going to go, ooh, can't help you there, bud, but thanks for taking the money and we'll look forward to your payment in 6 months. If you can try to consolidate your loans, you should do that. So in my bringing up of the problem of you might not be able to consolidate them, here's how I was able to consolidate some of my loans, even though lenders would not agree to work with me. So my parents, they took $100,000 out of my loans into an equity loan. So they got an equity loan for $100,000 to pay off the $100,000 that was in my name. And the thing is, my parents are both blessings. My mom co-signed on a lot of my loans. So if I can't pay on my loans, it doesn't just ruin my life and my credit, it ruins hers as well. So if you're a parent and you're just like, no, I'm not going to help my child out with their loans, but you co-signed on them, you're kind of in a position where you have to help your child out. So anyway, take out an equity loan. Consolidating is super important because it lowers your interest rate. It's a method to lower your interest rate, but it's also would lower your monthly payment. If I was not able to consolidate some of my loans and I had to pay all of my loans and their separate interest rates anywhere from 3% to like 9%, I would have been paying around $2,400 a month. Think about that. $2,400 a month in monthly loan payments. And that's more than a mortgage for a house. Giving that kind of money back to my school or my various lenders and my school, it just wasn't doable directly out of college. Tip number 4 is paying the most on your loans that have the highest interest rate. So once again, it's attacking this interest. Once again, student loans are predatory because their goal is to keep you in debt for as long as possible because they want to bleed you dry of every dollar you own. An example of this is one of my loans. I got down to around $3,000. So let's say my monthly payment is $300. I'd probably pay $500 on it instead. So, I'd have that loan paid off in about 6 months or so. For a $3,000 loan, I'm putting $500 on. But the way Discover has it set up, the minimum payments, once I got that loan to about $3,000, $3,000, the minimum payments were $50. It had it set up so I would pay another 111 payments. That's several years to pay off $3,000. That is ridiculous. So me personally, when I get my loans to a certain number that I'm comfortable with and I have a decent amount of money in my savings, I will just slap that loan out of the way and just get it over with. So moving on to tip 5 is you need to pay more than what's due for the month. At the very, very least, you need to pay at least what the interest is. So I say this because let's say you have a monthly payment for $300 for a loan, and $200 of that is going to your interest, meaning only $100 are actually going to your principal. If you have like $20,000 in loans and $200 is going to your interest and only $100 is going to your principal, you're slowly even scraping the surface of paying off that principal loan. Your interest, it's just eating you up at the end of the day. Your interest is accumulating super fast and then you won't even be touching your principal. So this is why it's good to pay over. So if you pay $500 instead of that $300, it's going to take the $200 from interest, but at least then you have another $200. So now you're paying $300. That, $300 to your principal. So there's more money getting taken away from that overall balance you owe. So the more principal you pay off, the less your interest rate stays the same, but your less interest numerically you will have to pay in the long run. I put a good portion of my paycheck into my loans. And I kind of take Dave Ramsey's advice, but I'm not living on rice and beans, but I do compromise by living at home. I could move out, I could buy a house, I could buy a car, I could do all these things irresponsibly with my money that I'd love to do, but I also would love to pay off my loans. When I at first graduated and I was in my grace period, I was scared of paying off my loans because I felt overwhelmed. And a lot of people who look at my situation go, I would be overwhelmed in your shoes. How are you not overwhelmed? And I am not entirely overwhelmed just because I'm paying on my loans. Paying on my loans, I'm not entirely afraid of anymore since I have them under control. And once you get in a good payment plan and you're putting a good amount of money into them every month and you're chipping away, it feels kind of good. I'm not saying I like paying on I don't look forward to paying on my loans every month, but I have like a moment of zen. I feel accomplished when I pay on my loans because it's, I guess, the first real adulting thing I am doing is paying on my own debt. I'm not comfortable. It's not where I want to be. So I don't know if I mentioned my major earlier. I majored in biology and I minored in chemistry. Like I said, I wanted to do parasitology, microbiology. I currently work in environmental science, which obviously is not my end game. So I'm still working to my ultimate path and I hope to make more money as my career goes on. If anything, going to an expensive school inspired me to make more money because I have to pay on my loans. But I mean, it keeps me driven. I mean, I know I wanted money in high school and I wanted money in college, and you get a little lazy after college and you start making a little money, and I want to make more money than I'm currently making.